Hello, thank you for joining this Sage 300 training video. Today's session will focus on journal entries in the General Ledger module. We will be reviewing the General Ledger Transactions folder and the batch list, the journal entry, and the posting icons. For this training session, we are going to be working in Sample Company Inc. To begin, navigate to the General Ledger module and the GL Transactions folder. Open up the batch listing screen. In Sage 300 General Ledger, transactions are not posted in real time, but in batches, which are collections of journal entries. A batch can have one or many entries. Once a batch is completed, it can then be posted to the General Ledger. Batches are created in one of three ways. They flow in from a subledger, such as accounts payable or receivable. They are manually created in the journal entry screen, or can be imported from a file or entered via an API from outside Sage. Batches can also be created by the General Ledger module from the following functions: recurring journal entries, allocation batches. If the company is multi-currency, batches can be created for currency revaluations. If licensed, the consolidation function can create batches from other Sage 300 companies. If licensed, intercompany transactions can create batches in the General Ledger. Now let's turn to the batch list screen. At the top, we see three controls: what the starting batch number is. Here you can enter an existing batch number and be taken straight to that batch. The source ledger field is a filter which will then only display batches with the indicated module as their point of origination. And there is a control which, when unselected, will only show the open, unposted batches. In the detail grid, we see the batch number, what the description of the batch is, which module is the source of the batch, the date the batch was last edited or changed. The Ready to Post column shows if the batch has been flagged that posting can happen on it. The Type column indicates if the batch came from a subledger, was imported, generated, recurring, or was manually entered. The Status column has the following possible statuses: open, deleted, posted, provisionally posted, post in progress, ready to post, or provisional post in progress. The Printed column shows if the batch listing report has been printed for the batch. The total of the batch is listed next, followed by the total quantity. There is a date for when the batch was created on. Posted batches will show in which order they were posted in the posting sequence column. The last two columns show the number of entries in the batch and if any entries errored out and were placed in an error batch. At the bottom of the screen are several buttons. The Open button will open up the batch selected. The New will create a new batch, and the Delete button will delete the batch selected. The Post button will post the batch and commit it to the General Ledger. The provisional posting will let you test the effects of your entry but will not commit it to the General Ledger. You will be able to run a few selected reports out of it as part of your testing, and then, when satisfied, post the batch. However, you can edit and alter the batch if you need to prior to posting it. The Print button will post the batch listing report, and the Refresh updates the view. There is also a Close button. Now, let's take a look at the journal entry screen. There are two ways to open it up. One option is from the batch list screen either open up an existing batch with the open icon or create a new one. Or from the main GL transactions screen, you can open up the journal entry screen. And from here, select an existing batch or use the green plus to create a new one. We're taking a look at a previously created entry. Looking at our screen, we see a few basic controls. At the very top, we have our first, previous, next, and last navigational icons around our batch number. We also have a Finder and a New button. Underneath it is a batch description where you can enter a description for the entirety of your batch. Below that, we have our entry number navigation. If we had multiple entries, we could use the first, previous, next, and last functions to navigate through the batch, or our Finder to select an entry from within the batch. If we want to create a new one, we can press the New button to get a new entry. And underneath our entry number, we have a description. We have the document date, the posting date, and the year and period. The posting date and the document date can be different. The posting date field informs the year period field. It utilizes the fiscal calendar to determine which year and period the posting date falls into. This is particularly important for those organizations that do not use traditional calendar months as their fiscal year, as their fiscal periods. The document date and the posting date can be different. The source codes are defined in the general ledger setup and indicate the source, module, and transaction type. To the right, we see some statistics about the entry. We see who entered it. Please note, this is the person the user ID who entered the entry, not the batch. We see the number of entries in the batch, the total debits, and the total credits for the batch. If quantity is enabled in your system, you will see the quantity field and the total numbers entered in the quantity fields. There is the batch type and the status of the batch. Next, we come to the entry mode, normal or quick. Quick allows you to enter information into the reference and description detail fields of the first detail line. The system then copies that information into each detail line thereafter. Normal allows you to enter different information into the reference and description fields on each detail line. To the right, we have the auto reverse function. If enabled, you have then two options for Sage to automatically create a reversing entry. The first is next period. The other option is specific period. From there, you can define which period you would like the reversal to happen in. Please note that the reversal period does need to be enabled and opened in your fiscal calendar. This function is a great asset to those who need to create a transaction and have it reversed in a later date and time automatically. Sage will create that reversal entry as part of the batch when it is posted. So it is important to understand that that reversal entry happens simultaneously as the initial one, just in a different fiscal period. In our next fields, we have the entry type. Jumping to a new entry for a moment, we can see that we have a default of standard, or we have a sales tax or a purchase tax. This would allow you to select a tax group and then create that distribution down in your journal entry grid. So if you need to impact your tax tables, if you have the tax module turned on, you can do so with the journal entry. Note, this feature is in newer versions of Sage 300. Very old versions do not have this functionality. Now let's take a look at the detail grid. We see we have multiple lines already created in here, and if we move the navigation slider across, we can see there is a collection of different fields in the grid. Instead of scrolling in the detail grid, let's click on the Detail button and open it up in the form view and explore the contents here. This is sometimes useful as it puts them all in one easy-to-see view. Our first field that we can see is the line number. This correlates to the line in the grid. We have a reference and a description field. These are both 60-character text fields. When data comes in from a subledger, such as accounts payable, receivable, order entry, purchase order, etc., these fields get populated with information based upon the GL integration setup in that module. The account number appears next, the detail date, the source code of the entry. This is inherited from the source code on the header, but can be changed and be different than the value on the header. We have either a debit or a credit entered. And if quantity is enabled and enabled on that particular GL account number, the quantity field becomes enabled. There is also a comment field. GL integration can write to this field, although it often does not appear on reports, whereas the reference and the description field do. The comment field, however, is 250 characters, so there's more space to put information on the particular line in this field. Finally, at the bottom, we have a Save, New, Delete, and Close button. Finally, there is the ability to create optional fields and assign them to GL accounts and utilize them on a transaction. This account doesn't have any GL optional fields associated with it. At the bottom of the screen, we have our total debits and our total credits of the entry. If we were to change one of the amounts, we would see now that our debits do not equal our credits and that we are out of balance. If we were to save this entry, we would get a warning message. Warning, the current entry is out of balance. This gives us the opportunity to come back in and correct our entry. It does not have to be corrected right away, but please do note that if it is not corrected, when you go to post, the posting of that entry will fail and Sage will create an error batch containing that entry. Sage will require that all entries balance with respect to debits and credits. At the bottom of our journal entry screen, we have a save, a delete. This will delete the entry within the batch. We have a posting button. This will post the entire batch. We have a clear button, and this will clear out all the details in the entry grid. And a close button. When you do something like press the close button, it will say, do you want to save changes for entry number, and then refer to your entry. In this case, I don't want to save the cleared out entry. I'm going to say no. And when I come back in, it's going to pick right back up where I was because I did not save the changes that I made. So let's create a new entry. We can put a new description in. And in this case, I'm going to just do a quick entry and say, give a reason for my entry. Let's make that a little bit bigger here. And then I'm going to select my account. I'm going to use my Finder. And maybe I put some depreciation in the wrong account. So by simply entering a reference and description, my account numbers, and my amounts, I've created an entry. Now, let's say I want to put this over a couple different accounts. I can do more than one account. In fact, I really have no limit of the number of lines that I can utilize in a journal entry. I can hit my Insert key and progress to the next line. Notice that I typed in just the first 2 digits of the account number, and Sage took me to that spot in my chart of accounts. This is a standard function of finders within Sage 300, inside Sage 300, and will work in all the different finders throughout the system. Now that I've created my entry, I can hit the Add button, and it will take me to the next entry. This setting is actually set based on the Settings Auto Clear function. If I uncheck this, when I hit the Save button, it will remain on that entry. But the default is to auto clear and take me to the next entry in the batch. I can either put a new entry in, or I can go back to a different entry and do maintenance on them, or simply close the batch. Now, our final thing is to post our batches. There are a couple ways that we can post our batches. One is, we mentioned a moment ago, with the Post button down here at the bottom of the journal entry screen. In the batch list, I can take a single batch, hit the Post button, and it will post. If I have multiple batches, I can change my Ready to Post from No to Yes and hit the Post All button, and this will post all the batches where the Ready to Post is flagged. If I want, I can use the Provisional Post button here and provisionally post this individual batch. If I have multiple batches to post and I want to post them provisionally, there's only one way to do that, and that is in the Post Batches screen here. If I hit Provisional Post, then all the batches, because this option is selected, will provisionally post. I also have the ability to do a range of batches, and with this function, I can either post or provisionally post. The All Batches function is also available for this Post button. I'm going to go ahead and post my batch. And now my batch is posted. This concludes our tutorial on journal entries in Sage 300. Thank you for watching and have a great day.